Welcome to the Vitamin Professor podcast, brought to you by VRM Media, publisher of Vitamin Retailer and Nutrition Industry Executive magazines, in partnership with Nutraland USA. I'm your host, Gene Bruno, Professor Emeritus of Nutraceutical Science and Chief Scientific Officer of Nutraland USA. The purpose of this podcast is to help educate the dietary supplement industry about the science of nutraceuticals and other relevant topics. If you like what you hear and see, don't forget to like and subscribe. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Alexis Collins of Stratum Nutrition, which is a premium supplier of novel evidence-based nutraceuticals. Alexis is a scientist and researcher with advanced degrees in both medical science and nutrition. She's been working in the dietary supplement industry for over 14 years, during which time she's gained fairly extensive experience in product development, technical sales support, as well as new ingredient evaluation and launches. As Stratum's Director of Product and Brand Strategy, Alexis evaluates and oversees new ingredient launches and provides creative and technical support to marketing and sales. Today, Alexis and I are going to discuss sage. Welcome, Alexis.
Hi, Gene. How are you doing?
I am doing really, really well. And we saw each other at Supply Side East and had a nice discussion. I remember after talking to you thinking, oh, good. She's lively. She's interesting. This should be a good podcast.
Same. So I'm excited to be here talking with you today.
So, when people think about sage, unless they happen to have a fairly extensive background in nutraceuticals, a nutraceutical application isn't the first thing that comes to mind. Even when I think of sage, the first thing that might come to mind is what I use in my stuffing for my Thanksgiving turkey.
Right.
But I'd like you to tell our listeners a little bit about the history of sage.
Sure. No, I completely agree. When my company first acquired this unique sage extract, I was the same. Sage was either something you were burning to get the evil karma out of the room, or it was something that made the Thanksgiving stuffing extremely fragrant and delicious. So I was kind of surprised when I started doing my deep research dive into all things sage as we were preparing for this acquisition and evaluating the sage extract. And I found out that as far back as, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, the use of sage has been promoted for brain health and cognitive health for hundreds of years. I remember reading a medieval script that said, "He who grows sage in his garden will never die." That was very amusing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I gotta start growing some sage, man.
I know. I was kind of like, okay, well, I don't really have the climate for it, but maybe I can get a pot going inside. And then, looking back into more documented texts, there was the Complete Herbal published in 1652 that stated, verbatim, sage is great for sage is, good for brain health and promoting memory. So I was kind of surprised. I was like, well, wait, I've seen sage promoted for digestive health and upper respiratory health, mostly in our supplement industry, but I haven't really seen it, as promoted for cognitive health as it seems that it would be, traditionally used for, just based on this history that I found. So that was kind of the intriguing first, dive into the ingredient for me.
I get that because, whereas where I have a master's degree in herbal medicine, it was not really one of the herbs that we studied at the time. This was a number of years back.
Yeah.
And I remember, I want to say somewhere around 2013, somewhere in that time frame, is when I first became aware that sage had these cognitive health applications. And I remember reading some of the early research and thinking, oh, this is pretty cool.
Right.
Which kind of leads me into my next question.
Sure.
Which is with this traditional use of sage for cognitive health, as well as some of the research that I had seen not that long ago, relatively speaking, about a decade or so. Why haven't we seen this herb take off like other popular nootropic herbs? What do you think?
Right, right. So I have my own sort of hypothesis on this. One, there's two reasons. One is that sage is, I mean, it might not be as different as I think from other traditional herbs that are being used in supplements, but the dive that I had to do on this ingredient into agricultural research journals ended up showing me that you can grow sage in the same exact geolocation, and just changing tiny variables and how it's grown, the time that it's harvested, produced up to an eightfold difference in levels of bioactives in the sage
Oh,
extract. So one customer might purchase a bottle of 30 doses and have a really good experience with enhanced focus and cognitive health. But then when they run out and they go purchase another bottle, that bottle might have been harvested at a different time, and they might not get the same experience because the levels of bioactives such as rosmarinic
ah,
acid could be very different in that second bottle if it's not a
so
dependable standardized product.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, I would say that in general, that can be a problem in the herbal supplement industry, is you always have to be so very careful about the herbs that you source, how they're
Right,
standardized, what they're done, because
right,
you might just get something that all herbs are not created equal, even if they have the same name. So
right,
yeah, that makes a
right.
lot of sense, Alexis.
Yes.
And this doesn't have to do specifically with what we're talking about, but something just hit me,
Yeah.
as we were talking, which
Mhm.
is kind of relevant. So the very term sage, people often use that to
Right.
refer to a wise or intelligent person, a sage individual. And I
Exactly.
wonder if that actual expression came because sage was associated with cognitive ability.
I
And
thought the same thing. I wanted to bring it up. We were talking about the history of it. I'm like, it's kind of ironic that the one herb called sage has not been
I
promoted
know,
so
right?
widely for cognitive health at this point, but I'll hold back my comments on that. So yeah, no, it is a very funny point. And the root name salvia of sage actually means all over health, like an all over cure all of all
Yeah,
health. So it's yeah, I was like, where has this herb been? So to that point, yes,
indeed.
the experience could be different if it is a more picky, fickle plant as far as what it's going to produce based on growth and harvest and region. And then,
Yeah.
yes, did you? Yeah.
So, well, which
Yeah.
makes me think.
Yes, yes.
I would venture to say then that the the sage extract that Stratum sells must have some differentiating features that
Yes.
make it a little bit more appealing if you
Yes.
plan on formulating a product with sage. You want to sort of address that, and that's why I mean I think you've kind of addressed why any
Kind of
sage won't do the
gotten.
job. But
Yeah.
tell us about Stratum Sage, what it's about.
Sure, sure, sure. So, like we were talking about, you definitely want to have a sage that is going to give your end consumer a dependable experience so that when they go back for that second bottle, they're going to get the same ingredient with the same bioactives and the same experience. So, this unique sage extract that we've acquired, it's 100% traceable, it's non-GMO, it's grown on the same
Oh,
specific farm that has put in a lot of work on how to grow sage from seed to soil to harvest. And we keep that information a bit proprietary, obviously, because that's an important part of making this ingredient. But because of all of the work that's gone into the farming of this specific sage, Salvia officinalis is the species that we're extracting. Because of all of the work that's gone into it, we have a dependable standardized product that's standardized to 2.5% rosmarinic acid. And rosmarinic acid is a very strong antioxidant that's associated a lot with a lot of the cognitive health benefits
oh
that
yeah.
come with sage. So in addition to that, this specific sage extract has its own clinical research published in a healthy older population. And I can definitely get into that study. But yeah,
Well, in fact, I am going to
yeah,
ask you about that, but I
sure.
also wanted to comment. Traceability is huge. You mentioned you have traceability on this.
Yes.
And, when you buy, I've formulated for the 45 years I've been in this industry, for about 30 something years, I've been formulating products. And you can get just a ton of different suppliers coming out and selling a given herb.
Right.
And, what they can't always tell you is where does it come from, or that there's traceability, because they may get a material from one batch from one country and then get another batch from another material from another country, or even if it's the
Yes,
same country, maybe a completely different region, it may be handled completely different. And even if you have a single compound in there that you said, okay, it's the same amount of this, that doesn't mean that the totality of all of the compounds that may contribute towards the
exactly.
efficacy of it are going to be
Exactly.
consistent. And so
Yes.
that when I hear traceability, I thought, oh, that's an
Yeah.
excellent thing. That means you do get that consistency.
Yes,
Yeah.
100% on the same page. I know I'm focusing on rosmarinic acid because that's one,
Well, it's a marker
bioactive
compound. Yeah.
that we can, standardize to. But looking at Salvia officinalis overall, like there are so many active compounds within this that have different effects in the body and in the brain. So yes,
Yeah.
getting sage from this country to this country, I mean, we've seen evidence that even sage grown in the same exact region can have completely different effects on a C. elegans lifespan model.
Right. Right.
And so it's like you wonder if it's across the globe, like it just the experience that the end
It's
consumer will have.
and if you think about it, that's not that much of a mental disconnect, really, because think about, you go to the supermarket, you buy a tomato, uh, and and you go to another supermarket, you buy a tomato, you go somewhere else, you buy it. They don't all taste the same. Some
No.
have different tastes, some have different aromas, some have different textures, and even
Right.
if they're the same species, the same variety of tomato,
Right.
there's differences. So that's not at all unusual. So yeah, so you were starting to talk about the study in an older population, but I noted, because
Yes.
I actually reviewed the two clinical studies
Mhm.
that were done on the two different distinct age groups, which I
Mhm.
think is really important. So
Mhm.
what I want to know is, what did the Scully study,
Mhm.
that clinical trial that was in
Mhm.
a healthy elderly population,
Mhm. Mhm.
what did it demonstrate, and
Mhm.
what did the Edwards study in adolescents and young adults demonstrate? Because I think it's so cool that you got those different population groups covered. So in any order you wish,
Sure, sure.
take it.
So I'll go into the Scully study, which was done on a healthy older population, just because that's what we substantiate most of our claims on this ingredient based
Mhm.
upon this study. So this was a small clinical trial, but it was randomized, placebo-controlled, and 20 volunteers were in it. And this was just a single dose of our sage extract. So this wasn't, this was our specific ingredient, our specific extract that was researched in various doses. And then what they found from this study, just to some, well, actually, let me tell you. So the way that they tested the cognitive assessment that was used in the study was the same cognitive assessment that's used to test anti-dementia drugs. So I'm going to totally flub the name of it. It's the cognitive assessment, computerized battery. I know I'm missing a word in there.
That works for me.
Okay. But basically, this computerized test that had all of these different tasks. And so the volunteers took this test at various time points after taking our sage extract. And what these tasks were put into were different sort of factors. So there was speed of attention, but then there was accuracy of attention. There was speed of memory, but then there was accuracy of memory. And where we saw our sage extract shine wasn't in speed. It's not speeding up your brain, but it was really honing in on accuracy of attention and accuracy of secondary memory. And secondary memory, compared to working memory, working memory is like, okay, I'm going to transfer this phone number over to this piece of paper, and you're writing something down and it's very quick. Secondary memory is I go upstairs, I get distracted by something, and then I go to the room that I was originally going to go to, and I don't remember what I'm there for. So that's my example of secondary memory, which I think
Very
a lot of
good.
people can relate to.
Oh yeah, sure
Yeah.
can.
So this study ended up showing us that there are two statistically significant doses of our sage extract compared to placebo. So for secondary memory, we ended up seeing a statistically significant boost in secondary memory in subjects taking our sage extract as quickly as 2.5 hours after the first dose. And that effect was prolonged through 4 hours. But then, small study, we ended up losing significance at the 6-hour mark.
Yeah.
Now, if we double, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did you have something to say?
I was just going to say that. So one of the things that, as a formulator, over the years that I love to be able to do when I'm formulating a product for somebody, especially if they're, they're marketing and salespeople and they want to get quantified claims. They want to get something they can sort of hang their hat on a little bit. To be able to say that there's research where you get more of an immediate effect, an effect within a couple hours of taking it, that's pretty big. Because if you think about it, a lot of ingredients, some ingredients with really good studies, like ginkgo, for example, you've taken it for a number of weeks or months before you're
Right.
realizing
It's a
it a
couple
benefit.
months.
And to be able to say, oh, 2 hours, or thereabouts,
Right.
and you're noticing something. And
Right.
so that's pretty cool. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you for mentioning that. We completely agree. It was definitely one of the big points, that really led us to acquiring this material was the quick experience that we had with it, just honestly in our own internal group. But in the study, so we talked about the 167 milligram dose. If you ended up doubling that dose, then memory and attention were significantly boosted compared to placebo in as quickly as 1 hour after the single dose of this sage extract.
That's amazing.
And that effect was sustained through the 6 hours of the study. So
Yeah.
significantly compared to placebo.
That's pretty cool. And the doses aren't unreasonable. I mean,
No.
a lot of times you have, I mean, it just depends. I mean, you could look at something like acetyl L-carnitine. Oh, that's great. Oh, yeah. All you got to have is a couple, a gram or two, and
Right.
that's a whole lot more.
It's hard.
And
Yes,
so
it's hard.
this is a pretty reasonable dose. Yeah.
Yes, to get the max benefit, from the clinical research that we have on this ingredient, 333 milligrams really isn't a lot to ask, for formulating. It does leave room to have some other ingredients formulated in with it as well. So and then just to speak to the mechanism of action of sage in general, Salvia officinalis, in this clinical study, there was also a secondary arm that did an in vitro analysis just to show that this sage extract had the mechanism of action that we anticipated it having, which is it's an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor.
Nice.
So so they just basically against an ethanol control confirmed that our specific extract also had this mechanism of action of, basically boosting acetylcholine, which is the neurotransmitter you want for that honing in and focusing type
for
of
that
effect.
kind of memory function. You want to have that. And if you are and if something is breaking that down, such as acetylcholine esterase, the enzyme that breaks it down, and if you can inhibit that and maintain the higher level, you could see where that's going to be of great benefit. And and one of the things that I know is when people age, there's a lot of different things that don't work quite the same as they used to, and there's declines in different levels. And so I have seen in reading a number of studies out there that it seems like as people age, they have a little bit more acetylcholine esterase and a little less acetylcholine. So
yes, it's very unfair. More scissors
it is unfair.
and less.
That's
more
right.
Scissors to cut up the few acetylcholines that we have.
Yeah. So I think it's pretty cool to have something that can actually help address that in a meaningful way.
Right. No, we really do see this extract poised to cover a demographic, I think, that needs this sort of ingredient. So, I refer to them as elder millennials, and I totally stole that from a comedian who I love on Netflix, Eliza Scherslinger, I think is her last name. So I'll totally give her credit, but I'm in the elder millennial group, so I bond with her. So we're having this demographic of people who, they're knowledge workers, they need to focus in, but their attention is constantly being taken, right? So Teams chat pops up, the cell phone gives you a notification, and you're trying to focus in, right? And then in addition to that, we're heading into the early 40s where the CDC is reporting 1 in 10 adults are reporting worsening memory loss, once they hit 45. So you have this like horrible battle for your attention, and you're trying to focus, and then you're also experiencing acetylcholine decline, worsening memory loss, right? So there's this group of people, I think, that they're going to really want an ingredient that's not going to help contribute to any sort of extra stress, anxiety, or sleep problems, which are certainly side effects of caffeine. And then, and so I think, there's been this real swing towards like energy, and it's like we want energy, but I really think that the majority of people, if they're not looking at sports nutrition, really want that mental energy and that mental endurance and that mental stamina and ability to focus and get the work done. And this group is really coming in there where they might not want so much caffeine, but they still want to have that focus. You know what I'm talking about? Like they
I
still
do,
want to have
because
that focus
caffeine is
support.
good at focus, but at the same time, if you have a sensitivity to it,
Right.
it can have that jittery effect, that central
After
nervous system
lunch,
effect. Yeah.
there's no way I can have caffeine and be able to fall asleep well. It's just, I'm a slow metabolizer. It's just not going
Mhm.
to happen. And then, the lovely added anxiety that comes, as you get older, I guess with more responsibilities, it's just not as friendly to me as it was in my 20s per se, right? So,
Well, then, speaking of
yeah.
20s,
Yes.
let's
Oh,
take
oh,
let's
sorry,
take
I
a moment.
totally drifted.
No, not at all. Let's take a moment to discuss, the research but done by Edwards et al.
Sure,
On
sure.
adolescents and young adults, because I think it's so cool to have two different age groups. You don't always see that
Yeah.
in nootropic type ingredients.
Right, right. So this study by Edwards was done in young adults and adolescents. So we're looking at a range of, I believe it was 14 to 18, might have been a little bit younger. I can't recall off the top of my head. But this study, I will say, in the end, there were not highly significant results that came from this study assessment in young adults and adolescents. They did get significance, I think, hit for immediate word recall, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And what the
So
research, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just looking at this. I'm cheating. I'm looking at the study as we're
Oh no,
talking.
go ahead. I'm
And they were
not.
talking,
Definitely me.
a significant improvement due to the sage
Yeah.
extract was shown for task assessing short-term episodic memory or immediate
Mm-hmm.
word recall,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
supporting the beneficial effects. And
Right.
one of the things I see there is that, again, what occurs to me is this age group. Uh, so you have adolescents, which were 12 to 14 years old, and they have the young adults, which are 18 to 25.
Yeah.
Um, Anyone in that age group may have need for immediate word recall. These are primary school times. These are,
Yeah.
middle school, high school. These are college years,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I think anybody could who's in academics can see the benefit of immediate word recall, something that can help them
True.
with that. So I'm just thinking that still has some interesting some
Right.
interesting potential applications.
It does. It does. And this is definitely an area I wouldn't say that we're not going to be pursuing more research in,
Yeah.
just because I do think that there are some mechanisms of SAGE that would play well with certain cognitive health benefits that would be needed by young adults and
Mhm.
adolescents. But in this study, yes, so it did show that immediate word recall effect. The most important point I think that it showed was the safety of taking our sage extract in young adults and adolescents. So it's very nice to have this study done showing safety across generations with our extract and the cognitive health boost that comes from it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we were just touching a little bit about mechanism of action,
Mm-hmm.
acetylcholine esterase inhibitor effects.
Mm-hmm.
So I wondered if you would care to just comment on how, as a mechanism of action,
Mm-hmm.
that differs in sage than in some of the other popular nootropics, if that's something that you are able to comment on.
Sure, sure. I can try. I haven't done as deep of a dive on other nootropics as I've done on sage, but I have looked at how you might want to formulate with different nootropic ingredients in sage. And there are a lot of, adaptogen ingredients that also work as nootropics. So the acetylcholine pathway is really the main active pathway that sage works by. There's also an oxidative stress component to it.
Sure.
And yes, there are other nootropic ingredients that work along the same pathway as sage with acetylcholine. But if you're looking to make, there are, and so it's not necessarily original in the acetylcholine pathway. There are certainly other ingredients that work there. But as far as, formulating, perhaps like sage is going to give you such a quick experience utilizing this pathway. You don't necessarily want to formulate with another nootropic that's going to work right along the same pathway. So you might want to look towards, Bacopa for dopamine or
Right.
saffron for GABA. You can kind of get this calm focus, de-stress, working memory
I
boost, you know?
like that you suggested not going along the same pathway. One of the things I see happens way too much out there in formulation is redundancy.
Right,
Using nutraceuticals, different nutraceuticals with the same mechanism of action over
right,
and over in a single product. It's
right.
like, why would you do that? Use
Exactly.
different mechanisms of action so you can attack the problem or the issue from different sides and get a greater overall effect. So,
Exactly.
and I would even
Exactly.
say that while there are nutraceuticals that you could certainly use to increase acetylcholine levels, if you come
Mhm.
to mind,
Mhm.
um, the difference here is that its mechanism is that it's helping. Well, it seems one of a major reason it seems to be helping the increase is by reducing the breakdown of that.
Right,
And
right.
that's a cool thing, because even if you're saying, well, I'm going to take other stuff to help increase my acetylcholine, okay, how's your acetylcholinesterase doing in your body? If
Very
that's
good
still at a high
point.
level, whatever you're taking, it gets converted. That's still going to be broken down. If you can,
Yeah.
I mean, it's all going to be broken down eventually, but if you can
Right, right.
reduce the breakdown,
Exactly.
yeah, that makes a whole
Exactly.
lot. And it's a nice way to do it too, because it's just taking whatever your body's making anyway and helping to keep it
Right.
there.
Right, exactly. I do. And personally, like I do love that type of pathway where it's what you're naturally producing and we're just letting what you naturally produce flow a little bit longer. So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
I've seen similar kinds of approaches in some products out there with testosterone boosters, where uh, combinations of herbs and other nutraceuticals are actually able to help decrease the the metabolization or the breakdown or the conversion of testosterone to
Hmm.
DHT or to estradiol. And by doing
Right.
that, you maintain
What you're
the
producing.
yeah, what you're producing, as opposed to say, I'm making so much more, your levels are
Right.
maintained at a higher level because you're not converting it to something else, or in
Right.
this case, breaking it down. So I think
Yeah.
it makes a great deal of sense.
Great.
I like that. So you know, um, what are every every nutraceutical has categories that it might be good in.
Mhm.
And if you look at a general cognitive health category, even those can have subcategories and all.
Mhm.
Just from your
Definitely.
understanding of sage, and in particular, stratum sage, what would you say are some of the categories where it's going to fit best?
Sure, sure. So I kind of went, around and talked about one a little bit earlier, but definitely for that post lunch pick me up when you would normally have a cup of caffeine, even though you know that it's going to harm your sleep later in the evening. I think that sage is a great alternative, cognitive booster to, per se having a cup of coffee. So for people who are caffeine sensitive, looking to move away from caffeine, any sort of formulations that are trying to move away from caffeine. I've seen a lot of pre-workouts marketing themselves as
Sure.
non-stim, but if you still want to have that quick effect that you would get with caffeine, I think that our sage extract is a great alternative because it's going to work quickly. The end user is going to experience it the same way that they would feel that enhancement with caffeine, but they're not going to get any of those, side effects of caffeine that they're looking to avoid by buying a non-stim product.
That makes sense. And when you mentioned the sports nutrition, it hit me immediately that, focus in a lot of different
Right.
sports is a big deal.
Yes.
And if you
Yep.
can take
Yep.
something that, whereas you might not be trying to improve your memory per se, uh,
Mm-hmm.
being able to do something to improve focus in those situations can be a big
Right.
deal. So it kind of makes sense that you could put it in there, and you don't have to do it at such high levels that it would be sort of a prohibitive. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Exactly, exactly. And then another category that I'm actually really excited about is helping out with a couple of perimenopausal symptoms. So we all know that there's this brain fog that is associated with perimenopause. Sage providing its cognitive boost in a healthy older population. I think it works really well with that. But now I'm diving into a lot of generic Salvia officinalis research that's showing. I mean, there was a meta-analysis published last year showing that Salvia officinalis specifically, our sage species, helps reduce the frequency of hot flashes. So you get this duo effect from this ingredient of boosting cognitive health and focus, which I think we all want no matter what stage of life we're in, And then also helping reduce with frequency of hot flashes is definitely a bonus. So I'm doing this meta, like research analysis right now. You caught me like right in the middle of it, but that's what I'm excited about right now for it.
So I have to tell you, it's something that I've formulated a number of products in over the years for menopause. And I've actually used sage in some of it because part of its traditional use has to do with
Is
reducing night
the
sweats.
sweating. Yeah. Hyperhidrosis.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that is kind of cool because
Yeah.
listen, it's cool to say, hey, this is reducing your hot flashes, which is great and the most common
Mm-hmm.
symptom. But the truth is, there's a lot of ingredients that do that. There's
Mm-hmm.
not a
True.
lot. There's not
That
a
reduce
lot
the
that reduce
sweating.
the night sweating.
Yeah.
So if you've got a formula there, or you want to create one, or you have one already, where you say, yeah, this is going to help with hot flashes, but you don't have anything there to address night sweats, you should consider sage because
Exactly.
that helps it. And like I say, I've used that in years past,
Exactly.
and
Yeah, yeah.
good feedback. It
So
really
again,
works.
I started in this whole like cognitive realm with this ingredient, and now I'm going and I'm exploring all of the other benefits of salvia officinalis
It's
specifically. I
it's
know,
the
so it's
beauty of
nice.
herbal medicine.
It is the
No
beauty of
one
herbal
thing
medicine.
does not it doesn't there's not just a one narrow
Exactly.
focus. It can do many herbs can do many
Right.
things.
Right.
Sage
Right.
certainly fits that description. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And then I would just say, speaking to like the caffeine point, obviously, I think for, any sort of all-nighter, or if you need to bang out a paper, an article, and it's certainly past time to have caffeine, then I think that this is a fantastic ingredient for it. And since our research is done on a single dose, effective within the first hour, I think that it's fantastic just for these. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it can certainly be this daily dose that you want to take just for optimization. But it's also great to have an experiential ingredient, kind of the way you would use caffeine, that will give you a benefit as you need it on the go, or, you don't necessarily have to take it every day.
So here's something I'm wondering about
Yeah.
now. We're talking about like you could take it then and you could take it at certain times you're needing it. And I have formulated a lot of different dosage delivery forms over the
Mm-hmm.
years. I remember when gummies came out, I inaccurately predicted, oh, this will never go anywhere.
I think you and me both, and a lot of other people were like,
And they're like,
okay.
oh, well, it's good for kids. And then
Yeah,
adults,
exactly.
what?
Sure.
What's happening here? So, but capsules, tablets, that's sort of a standard, and it can, not even really worth having a discussion about that because obviously it can work in those. It's powder, it's great.
Yep, yep.
But I start thinking about things like, okay, what if somebody's doing a powder or a stick pack or gummies? Is it suitable for there? Because listen, sage has a wonderful flavor, but it's the kind of flavor you use with your stuffing or poultry
Yes,
or
we
other
have
things.
made Thanksgiving gummies, and they will be available in November now.
So I'm just wondering, is this something that could be used in a dosage delivery form like a gummy or a powder? And if so, do you need some flavor masking agents to help neutralize some of that? I know a lot of times you can mix something, you can make a real strong taste like a grape berry kind of combo that's got a
Mhm.
heavy taste to it
Mhm,
that
mhm.
can cover up some stuff. And this isn't like a bitter, nasty taste. It's just a
Right,
earthy,
right.
sagey taste.
Exactly. So, remove, I guess, what you think of sage tasting like when you're cooking it with, your Thanksgiving stuffing or your chicken dressing. And so this does definitely have an herbal flavor to it, but it's not going to be that overwhelming sage
Oh,
flavor that
okay.
we think
All
of.
right.
Just the ethanolic extraction of it makes it a lot easier to formulate with. So
Oh, nice.
so we have some really nice lime mojito flavored gummies that work really well. We did the mojito, it's like they're lime, but they've got this little herbal finish. So it's not a bad herbal finish, it's just an adult flavor. So we really
Well,
love that. So it works really well in
yeah.
that. And the dose is low. So again, another benefit for formulating into gummies. So you don't have to have like 6 gummies all at once to get your, brain boost going. It dissolves really well. And we have the micronized version in a stick pack, so it can go
Oh, you have a
straight into
micronized
water.
version.
We
Oh, okay.
do, we do. So it can go straight into water, dissolves easily, mixes up easily, and I liken it most to an iced green tea. So very nice flavor.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and then we all, obviously like it works well with other flavors too. You just kind of have to find the right ones, but we haven't run into any roadblocks with it as far as formulating. It's really
That's pretty
flexible.
cool. And I should probably take this offline, but I want to get a sample of the
I
microbiome. And I'm working on a product that might work really well in. So
Sure,
I'll talk to you
sure.
about that
No,
later.
we'll do that. Yeah, yeah. No, that sounds great.
So, okay, cool. Thank you for
Awesome.
that. Now,
Yeah.
So based on the research,
hmm
what doses would you recommend be used in a supplement, and
hmm
how often should it be taken? Is it a once a day thing? Is it a twice a day thing? What can you address that?
Sure, sure. So we generally recommend this as a daily dose. If you're looking for just sustained cognitive health, then I don't see any problem with taking the 167 milligrams. That's the dose that had the first significant cognitive boost compared to placebo at 2.5 hours. So that's a really good maintenance dose if you're looking for, or if you can wait, if you're okay with a little bit more of a latent, mental boost, then by all means, the 167 is scientifically proven. The 333 milligram dose, I need my brain boost. I want it now. Let's go. That's the dose I would recommend for that. And all you're going to need is once daily, because our research showed that effect is sustained through the 6 hours of the study.
Oh,
So
that's beautiful.
yeah. So you don't really need a dose more than that. And then, yeah, as far as how people want to take it, it certainly works on the go as you want it. And it could certainly help with cognitive health based on all of our medieval traditional literature and traditional use of sage that we were talking about earlier. It's absolutely fine to take it daily. It's probably, great. But our research right now is focused on the immediate cognitive benefits of it.
Okay, very good. Well, that's excellent. I think you have answered all of my questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or do you feel like you kind of covered it for the most part here?
I think we've covered it. This has been a great conversation, Gene. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So, thank you to Alexis for joining us today. And just want to remind everybody that if you liked what you heard and saw, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, see you next time.